Folks, the 95th Academy Awards are tomorrow, and in honor of that, I'm going to continue a tradition that I've been doing on this channel in the past 2 years, which is ranking all of the Best Picture nominees. Let's do it. So in case it's your first time here or you forgot how it works, I rank each nominee in 2 categories. One being my favorite, how much I personally liked it, forgetting anything objective about the craft, even if there is anything objective about the craft. And then the other category is best, which is sort of how well I thought it achieved what it was going for, which still has some subjectivity in there, but I try to be a little more broad and look at the situation from more of an objective perspective again, if that's possible. Let's just start it off then. And for those of you who watched last year's video, you will recall that my number 10 spot was Coda, which was both my least favorite of the nominees and the one that I deemed to be the worst. And naturally, that ended up winning Best Picture, which is a problem I don't think we'll have to worry about this year because my number 10 is Elvis. Let's start with the bad for Elvis. And the first thing I'll say is that the editing, I know I'm not alone in this opinion, but my God, I thought it was far too over the top. Really just, look, I understand and can appreciate Baz Luhrmann's general, over the topness when it comes to these things. But I thought the editing just really did not do any favors to the story he was telling. It's almost like everything was montage, sort of. And while it's certainly impressive, I can respect the amount of work that must have gone into that. It was, I don't want to call it disgusting to look at, but like it hurt. It didn't feel like I was watching a movie. Maybe I was on a roller coaster ride or something like that, but not the kind of experience I want when I go to see a movie. Also talk about Colonel Parker, which is Tom Hanks's the character there. I thought, first of all, he was ridiculously goofy, which is obviously the intention, but that doesn't change how goofy it was. And then also, I think it was a very interesting decision that I personally did not appreciate, to have the story sort of revolve around him, not about Elvis, because sort of through his eyes as a manipulative manager, which I don't think was the right choice whatsoever. I don't think Colonel Parker was a very interesting character. And then obviously you have to discuss, this is something I will be repeating, the length of this film. It just runs for too long. But if we're looking at the good here, this is actually a film that I still would give a positive rating to, if ever so slightly. I left the theater and it was negative, and then I thought about it and it was positive. And it might change if I were to watch it again, but because I just really like Elvis's story here. And, besides the editing, I do appreciate just how crazy Baz Luhrmann is and the extravagant sets he builds and just the kind of sequences he's able to pull off at times that I think are really impressive. And Elvis's story is a very fascinating one. All that being said, it's a number 10. Coming in at number 9, and I guess if any film was going to spoil sort of the consensus pick, it would be this one, which is All Quiet on the Western Front, which I'm aware is a somewhat controversial opinion, although I am seeing more people who agree with me than I ever thought I would see. We'll start with the bad again. Again, you got to look at the length here. This is a nearly 3-hour film. Doesn't need to be that long. The film is frankly just not interesting for a number of reasons, but it was boring. I was not enjoying or even invested in anything I was watching. I think part of that is because we've seen war films before. We've seen everybody. I feel like, again, just my opinion. If you like the film, that's fine. But this was sort of touted as the war film to end all war films, the one that is actually anti-war because it shows how bad war is. And newsflash, we see that constantly. This is a great genre of film that I do love. I can really appreciate a good anti-war film. I just did not find that to be this. And then I will also say, and again, I'm fully aware that this is just a me thing, but I was not personally invested into any of the characters, into any of their situations. And I thought, obviously, war is supposed to be shocking, but it felt like the massive amount of the things that happened in the film were intended just simply for shock value. Wasn't a huge fan of the performances. I thought they were fine. And so at the end of the day, this is just a film that I was not invested in. And as a result, I could never really, be gripped by what I was watching. what I will say is good is I've only seen the original before. I saw the original 1931, and it did not have a diplomacy angle like this one has. This one sort of shows the behind-the-scenes aspect of the war, with the diplomats begging for the war to end, because each passing day really means the loss of more life, and I thought that was pretty profound and a neat angle to take on the story with. And then obviously, you know, the technical aspects here are stellar. The cinematography is really beautiful to look at. The score, super powerful. The visual effects are great, and really all of this does a number on sort of integrating you into the environment. You know, you really feel like this is a World War I. Like, not for a second was I not immersed, at the very least, in the surroundings. Coming in at number 8, and this one is also probably going to be a shock because I know a lot of people love this one. It's going to be The Fabelmans, which is a little sad. I was looking forward to this one. And this is, I mean, Spielberg's last film, West Side Story, was number 1 last time I did this. Not to spoil anything, but it was both my best, the film I thought was the best, and my favorite of the lineup. So it was number 1, and this time he's number 8, and I'll tell you why. First of all, if I'm being honest, I think the film is a little messy. I think it tackles a lot of different things, and I think it only does one of them very well, and I will talk about that in a bit. But you got his divorce, all sorts of his relationships. You've got his parents' divorce, all sorts of the relationships in his lives, whether it's his uncle, his siblings, potential love interest, bullies. You've got him integrating into new schools, and then you've obviously got the cinema angle, and I just don't think it's able to balance it all. This is one that I've struggled with a little bit, and I should probably watch this film a second time. But you look at scenes like the hallway scene, which everybody loved. They thought it was great. And I just really could not resonate with that scene at all. I thought it was very goofy. The writing was off. I did not really enjoy the acting there. I'm still not even fully sure of the intention Spielberg had, including that. You know, that cinema, I guess, has the power to make bad look good or something. And I mean, I really am not sure what's going on there. That is not a scene I enjoyed, and there are a few scenes like that throughout the film. And it just wasn't very exceptional to me. It didn't do anything exceptionally well, unfortunately. But on the good side of things, what I will say is that I did really appreciate everything having to do with the magic of cinema. That's been a big trend recently, and I think as far as the magic of cinema aspect goes, this has been one of the best films to really capture just how moving and profound it can be. And, you know, that was never in doubt. Spielberg is a genius. He understands the craft better than anybody else, in my opinion. So for him to nail that does not surprise me at all. Then we're going to move on to number 7, which is going to be Triangle of Sadness. Talking about the bad, the film does drag quite a bit at points. I'm not going to say it's too long necessarily, because I do like the 3-act structure here, but I definitely think that there are some scenes that just carry on for too long, and I'm really not sure why, whether it be comedic effect or to really nail home a certain point that I think was already probably well conveyed in the scene. I don't think it needs to be as dragged as it is. And then on that note, I think the 3rd act, even though it probably is the best and the most interesting, that one is definitely the one that really stretches that idea. And then obviously I think the commentary is a little surface level here, which didn't personally bother me, but I did dock it down on the best scale for me, because I do think that the better satires have some subtlety. Let's talk about the good, and the good is that it's quite funny at parts. I enjoyed the humor of the film. And then I just also think it's an interesting premise, and whether or not it's the most biting social commentary or not, it tackles an idea. Yes, it's explored all the time. You know, I like The Menu too, which is also a very satirical film that is not breaking any ground satirically by any means, but it was still one that I liked, and that tackles an interesting idea worth talking about. Moving into the top half of the nominees now, and coming in at number 5 is going to be Top Gun Maverick. And I really don't have a ton to say here, because the bad here is just that it's a little bit standard. I mean, it's a pretty classic blockbuster. It really is nothing special or unique by any means. And then the good here is that it's just a whole lot of fun, super entertaining. This obviously is not one of the best films of all time, not one of the best made films of the year, obviously, which is why it's only 5, because again, this is my number 1 favorite of the year. That's not true. Number 1 favorite of the nominees, sorry. Because it's just a really, really fun film that is well made and excels at what it's going for. But at the end of the day, Not a super special one by any means, though one that I still really like. Then let's move on to number 6, which is going to be Women Talking. And Women Talking, I will just say that the cinematography here is very bland. Obviously, people have been talking about that the whole time. And I have another criticism, but I don't really, this is one that I'm constantly struggling with as well, because I'm going to talk in a sec about how the subject matter is really good here, really powerful stuff, but the film just didn't really stick with me. It didn't, I don't know, it wasn't as impactful as I feel like it was trying to be. And whether or not that's because the cinematography could be bland at points, or just generally maybe the film was approached in a sort of a, I don't understand. I really don't. I couldn't tell you why it didn't impact me as much as it did. And maybe I could articulate it better on another watch, but that's the unfortunate reality. But then on the good side of things, I will say that the subject matter independently was very thought-provoking. When I was watching the film, I was thinking about it. After the film, I was thinking about it. And it is, the treatment of women in general, contemporarily, because you watch the film and you're thinking, oh, this is in the past. And then obviously there's a line about the 2010 census or whatever. Women around the world in the United States are constantly being treated in ways similar to this. And so I think these are interesting conversations to have and an interesting idea to explore in a film. And then obviously the performances are absolutely incredible here. You have Jessie Buckley, Claire Foy, phenomenal actresses just going back and forth. And then Rooney Mara's great, Ben Wishaw's great. And it's really those four that make up the bulk of the good performances here. And then there's some excellent writing and dialogue, which is absolutely essential for a film like this that is just completely carried by its dialogue. You just have to have good writing, and this film does. Let's move now to number 4, which is going to be Tar. And then there are 2 real things that I just have to say about this. One is that it is too long. Again, we're talking almost 3 hours here, although I will say to its credit that the pacing is very good for this film, unlike a lot of other longer films. It still is too much in the end, if you ask me. But for its length, it doesn't feel as long as it is. I can at least give it that. And then the other thing here is that it's just not my cup of tea, which is why it's so far down on the favorite scale, but very high up on the best scale, because it excels at what it's going for. I guess we're moving into the good. Cate Blanchett is absolutely phenomenal in this role. She is incredible. And then you can't fault it for, it does exactly what it's trying to do. And I admire that goal very much. I think, to create a piece of art that can be interpreted in many different ways and isn't exactly taking a perspective and is instead sort of just depicting something that feels like it could happen in this reality, which is, again, a thought-provoking discussion to have. It's a very interesting film and one that I admire and respect more than I actually enjoy. But it is number 4 here. And then coming in at number 3, never would have thought this would have happened. If you had told me that this was at number 3, would have laughed in your face. Avatar, The Way of Water. First of all, again, this film is too long. That's the last time I'm going to say this on this list. You can cross that off because it is over 3 hours, and that's just too long. And then I will also say, sort of like Top Gun, this film is not all that special by any means. It's a great blockbuster. The script is really lacking here. But again, it's not really trying to. And what makes it so good is that it is just such a well-crafted blockbuster, almost like Top Gun. It is so well made. The visual effects are incredible, crafted so meticulously. And James Cameron's vision of this entire new world that you can be immersed in. The action is phenomenal, off the charts good, and it is just so admirable, the level of craft that everyone who worked on this film is operating at. It's a really admirable and incredible feat of cinema. Coming in at number 2 is going to be The Banshees of Inisherin. And then the only thing I would have to say about The Banshees of Inisherin is that there are some slight pacing issues. And it's not too long or anything like that. It doesn't ever get boring, but there are definitely some scenes where it meanders just a little bit too long. And it feels like it definitely could have moved quicker point to point. But it's the only bad thing I could have to say about it. The only negative thing I could say about it. You've got a great script here, which manages, Martin McDonagh is just incredible at this, manages to be really funny as well. And this one especially, it's like a very dark kind of humor because the subject matter is very dark, but it's also, you know, it is thought-provoking. It gets you, it got me to sort of self-reflect and just consider certain things that you might not otherwise consider. And for such a simple narrative, you know, two friends that are speaking to each other, it really has so much nuance and complexity there. And I really like all the character dynamics here. I think all of the actors are great, absolutely great acting from at least 4 performers, which is an incredible thing to say. Banshees is just an entertaining film. I think it's funny, and, you know, certainly a solid runner-up in the lineup, but there's only one film that can be number 1. And so coming in at number 1 is going to be Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then firstly, I will say, not too long, but towards the end especially, I did find that it overstayed its welcome a bit. And by that I mean that it really just tries to conclude the film over and over again, it feels like. You've got multiple spots that felt like they could have reasonably been an ending, and it just keeps going, because I guess there's a lot of things you got to tie up, you got to put a bow on before saying goodbye. But anyway, that's a problem. And then the other thing is completely subjective, and it's that the humor was not always my cup of tea. But on the good side, you know, you almost can't praise it enough. You've got some really, really great action here. A super fun narrative that, again, is sort of ties into a bit of a trope that's developing, which is sort of multiversal storytelling, and it takes great advantage of that concept and idea to tell a universal story that just, I mean, that's what universal means, that just about everyone can relate to and emotionally resonate with and appreciate. And it doesn't really matter what part you're resonating with, whether you're resonating with a mother-daughter story or a family dynamic or job dissatisfaction or life dissatisfaction, or a number of things that the film tackles, because it really is almost about everything everywhere all at once. Love, so many different ideas are explored in this film, and it manages to be funny while doing so. It manages to be entertaining while doing so, and it is really a once in a, I don't want to say lifetime, I do think that's a little maybe dramatic, but a once in a generation type film, right? And I don't know, I mean, I'm not going to say ever. This is one of the most original films I've seen in quite some time. I owe that, of course, to the Daniels, the brilliant minds behind this, the directors here, who not only with the concept and the writing, but I mean, just some of the shots that they pull off in here, really clever stuff that work very well with the themes that they're exploring here. So a very impressive film. Sorry, low battery popped up. Very impressive film. Very entertaining film. Again, not the first to say this, won't be the last. Nobody thought that this was gonna win. I mean, some people did, but really, if you ask them, they'll tell you they were sort of hoping more than anything. And slowly but surely, it made its way into the race to get nominated, and then it started sweeping. And if it pulls it off tomorrow night, which it should, I would be very surprised and disappointed if it didn't. It will be historic. It will signify a new Academy, in my opinion, which I hesitate to say a little bit because they did just pick Coda, which is maybe the antithesis of this film in terms of originality. But anyway, enough Coda hate for this video. Yeah. Couldn't imagine a more deserving winner from this crop, because the Best Picture, in my opinion, is all about recognizing achievements in cinema, and this certainly is one. And I think it will come to affect the future in many ways, in terms of what filmmakers create, in terms of what films are honored and recognized and appreciated in the public consciousness. And I think it deserves the hype and the success. We'll see how it does tomorrow. All right, folks, so that is my ranking of the 10 Best Picture nominees of the year. Let me know if you agree or disagree. If I said anything controversial, obviously I did. And last year, the video aged poorly, obviously, because Coda came and last in my thing, and then it won. Please make up for your mistake this year, Academy. Folks, I will see you tomorrow. I may or may not do a prediction video, depends on how I'm feeling. But this ceremony is going to be exciting. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.